Right, well, good afternoon. Now, I'm here with the Treasurer, the Minister for Social Services and the Assistant Minister for Disabilities to talk about the NDIS. And we're joined by John Della Bosca and other advocates for disabilities who've come to Parliament today to ask every member of the House and the Senate to support the increase in the Medicare levy. 0.5% will ensure that this great national enterprise, of practical love, of compassion, of community solidarity, of supporting each other, and, as we've just discussed, with the mothers just there with their children, an important exercise in productivity, this deserves to be fully funded. And John and his colleagues have been leading a campaign for years demanding that the NDIS be fully funded. This budget delivers that. Increasing the Medicare levy by 0.5% from 2019 will ensure that the Commonwealth's share of the NDIS is fully funded. It'll mean those two little boys will know when they need the NDIS in the future, it will be paid for. Their mothers will know that, their parents will know that, their grandparents will know that. That is the commitment that we make. It is the least we can do. We speak a lot about compassion, we speak a lot about love and empathy and community here in this place, but we have to make sure we can pay for it. So, John, thank you for coming here and using your great skills as an advocate, as a political advocate, to get the support we need to ensure that this great reform, fully funding the NDIS, is delivered. So, John, I'd ask you to say a few words.
Well, thank you very much, Prime Minister, and thank you very much, everybody, for coming this afternoon. Put simply, what we've been doing today, what we intend to do this afternoon, and what we'll be doing over the next days and weeks, and even if it takes months, is to make sure that everybody in this Parliament understands, regardless of what party or what faction they're in, that the NDIS, to be successful, and it is already a very great success story in terms of the things that the Prime Minister canvassed, to be completely successful, it needs to be truly intergenerational. We need to lock in the funding for the NDIS into the future. We can't leave it to the whim of one Parliament another, one budget another, no disrespect intended, one Treasurer another. It needs to be something that one government, this government, has said they're prepared to. They've got in their budget to lock in that funding increase and keep it there so that no future government can change those priorities and harm the NDIA's mission. Now, it happens to be, by the way, of course, that if you go back to the Productivity Commission's original numbers, this proposal matches very nearly exactly the kind of growth that is needed to fund the NDIA into the future. So it would be remiss of us as people that have been campaigning, as every Australian accounts has, for the National Disability Insurance Scheme to be the best possible scheme it can be. For now 7, 8, 9, some of us for 10 years, if we didn't take this opportunity to advocate to every Member of Parliament here, Senator, Member of Parliament, that the Medicare levy adjustment, the increase in the Medicare levy must happen in order to secure a consistent, sustainable funding stream for the NDIS. And that's what we're telling everybody, and that's what we'll keep telling everybody until we get a result. Thank you.
John.
Well done.
I'm going to bring this around here because this is important.
Do you want us to hold it for
This
you?
is something that John sent to me not long after I became Treasurer. And the answer of the Turnbull government is yes. This is exactly what we're going to do, John. We are going to fully fund the NDIS. And to do that, you need to understand two things. First, you've got to understand that there is a funding gap in the NDIS, and Minister Porter's been making that point, I think, very well. And there is a funding gap, and it does have to be filled. And if it's not filled, then families who deal with disabilities will not have the certainty they need. And then you've got to have a fair way of filling that gap, which is what we've done with the Medicare levy. That's the fair way to do it because, as Julia Gillard said, everybody puts in because everybody takes out. And that's a real fundamental principle of how the Medicare levy works, and that's how it should continue to work for the NDIS. So, you know, we're not playing games with this. It was a pretty simple ask from John. Fund the NDIS. That's what we're doing. That's what the budget has achieved. And I'm very pleased that we've been able to answer your question, John, in this way. And we ask the Parliament to say yes as well, rather than say no.
Thanks, Scott.
Christian?
Well, I won't add too much more. It was lovely meeting all of the delegation here. Young Nathan's mum commented that his chances to have a productive life as an Australian citizen where life is made meaningful through community engagement and through work will depend on the NDIS and the intergenerational way in which the NDIS can improve individual lives through the packages, focusing on engagement with the community and empowering individuals. John, thanks for being here today. One thing I would say is that when we came to look at this 0.5% increase in the Medicare levy, understanding what the gap was and where it started in the year 2020 at just over $4 billion and how it grew to a cumulative $55 billion, the fit between a 0.5% increase in the Medicare levy and the gap was so near to being exact, it was almost like it was meant to happen. And John, I don't know whether you know, but my suspicion is that when the original 0.5% Medicare levy was policy of the Labor Party, they'd always meant to go to 1%. The sense I've got is they'd always meant to go to 1%, but at the last minute they balked because they misunderstood the generosity of the Australian people and misunderstood how the Australian people understand that this is a scheme which, if everyone can put in according to their ability to put in, everyone benefits for generations to come in Australia. And I don't know, maybe John knows, but that's my suspicion.
Thanks, Christian. Jane.
Oh, thank you, Prime Minister. Look, we've been talking about Nicholas and Nathan and the future generations are going to benefit, but we also met today the mothers who have children in their 30s and 40s who are now going to be outliving them. And this is the changes that come with medical advances. Those parents, and there's a large cohort out there, are really anxious about what's going to happen to their children when they die. So this NDIS is life-changing for them, and it gives them so much comfort in their older age that their children will be looked after if we can properly fund NDIS.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. Minister, what talks have you held with Mr Shorten on the NDIS? Do you plan to hold any further talks in coming weeks to get this across the line?
Well, we certainly have sought the support, as you know, we've sought the support of the Labor Party to this. What's so disappointing is that all of the logic that stood behind Bill Shorten's advocacy for a 0.5% increase in the NDIS back in 2012 stands today. I mean, it is utterly consistent, and I think the point that Christian made about the perfect fit that the extra 0.5% makes to fill the gap is very well made. So this is very, very clear, and the logic that Julia Gillard and Bill Shorten applied those years ago, they should apply today. And we know that a majority of his shadow cabinet support it, and he should too. And I think the case that's being made by John Della Bosca and Ara and Catherine and Kirsten and the other advocates here today is a very powerful one.
Treasurer, if you were to...
Prime Minister, can you...
Sorry.
Tax increases scheduled to start in July on 2019. Are you quite happy to focus to the next election cycle?
Well, we're focused on getting it approved by the Parliament now, so that is our commitment, and we're seeking support for it right now. But we are very committed to this. We are committed to fully fund the NDIS. This is the fair response. It is absolutely consistent with what the Labor Party did in 2012. There is no rational or logical basis for opposing this. Yeah, please.
It's cruel to let this linger. The reason we put it in the budget is because we need the certainty now. Those parents, particularly those older parents, they need the certainty now. They need to know that the levy will be there in 1920, it's all accounted for, the fund's established, and they can have that certainty. So what we want to legislate for now is certainty. The funds will follow when the bills turn up. And it means that we can now focus, Christian and everyone can focus on delivering the NDIS. And that's what we should be focused on now, in settling the funding question.
Can you say
Hang on, Samantha.
Yeah, so Treasurer, if you were to take up the Labor Party's proposal and only allow the tax increase to hit when you're earning over $87,000 a year, how much of the $8 billion in revenue would you lose?
Well, there's 2 points here, Sam. One is they are not increasing the Medicare levy to fund the NDIS. Chris Bowen has made that crystal clear. He has no intention of sending 1 cent of their increase in the Medicare levy to fund the NDIS. So the answer to your question is there's a $55.7 billion hole, because they're not even interested in acknowledging there is a funding hole. It doesn't cover it. It misses it by the tens of billions of dollars. No, I do. It's $15 billion over 10 years. They're out. It doesn't cover it. But what's even more important is they are not going to send a cent of the increase in the Medicare levy to fund the NDIS. Not 1 cent. It's not going to go to the special account. It's not going to go to support one disabled Australian. It's just a tax increase.
Prime Minister, can you save the thing called plan?
Sorry, the Productivity Commission has a report out on the NDIS. It said that there's a higher than expected number of children in the scheme, and in particular with autism. What are you going to do to manage that?
Well, the Productivity Commission has noted the extraordinary commitment that is being put into the scheme. They've noted the importance of it as a great national enterprise, as I said. But I'll ask the Minister to say a bit more about the PC report.
So the first several recommendations, thank you, Ian. The first several recommendations deal with the global issue, is it on track? The Productivity Commission say two things. Essentially, it is on track and it is on budget. They note that inside the budget that there are upward pressures, and one of those pressures is more children than expected presenting as applicants for the NDIS. They also note that there are a range of downward pressures at the same time, but at the moment we are tracking on budget. The way in which we've been dealing with the greater than expected number of children presenting is through the early childhood gateway, and essentially that is an assessment prior to the age of 6 and the delivery of supports outside but allied and parallel to the NDIS to try and make sure that as much improvement in every individual child presenting is made, so that the numbers that actually enter at the point at which entry occurs is lower and more in line with expectations. But we will find throughout this process that some actuals will be above and some will be below estimates.
Prime Minister, given the feedback that you were getting yesterday from the party room, can you say to the